Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Just a heads up before we get into this webinar, we are recording this and we will share it out afterward. So if you missed something, we definitely will share the recording, or if you want to share it with some friends or families, you're welcome to do that as well. Real quick introduction of who's presenting today. I'm John Roberts. I'm our Director of Cyber Operations with Marco Technologies. And I've got Josh, one of our security consulting engineers, on as well to help talk through this topic today. Little bit change of pace with how these webinars usually go. We're kind of shifting the audience a little bit from our standard webinars. Typically, we're really focused on the business and how you can improve your business security. Today, we're going to take a little bit closer look at what you can be doing in your personal life, especially as we approach the holidays. The holidays, there's always an increase in phishing attacks and people taking advantage of the online shopping and in-person shopping and everything else. So we want to shine a spotlight on that a little bit. And although it is geared mostly toward personal life, it 100% is applicable to work as well, right? The same things that you always hear we should be doing in the corporate world as far as watching out for phishing attacks and making sure we're operating securely, is applicable to your personal life. And if you're joining this call, odds are you're seen as somebody who knows something about technology within your friends and family circles. And so we want to make sure that this message gets shared, obviously, from you to your friends and family as well, to make sure that they're safe during the holidays too. So, and with that, we're going to jump into it. But I do want to say that if you have any questions that come up during this, please drop them in the chat. We will respond to those as we see them, and at the very least, we'll have some time at the end to cover any questions that were asked. So, getting into it, why are we talking about personal security today? Well, I kind of already alluded to it. There's a lot going on as we enter the holidays. The holidays are always a busy time for attackers to try and capitalize on naive or ignorant shoppers, right? Somebody sees a deal that's too good to be true online, and they go and try to log into a website to buy whatever they're trying to buy. And unfortunately, by doing that, they're giving up their credentials to a bad actor. Or maybe they're going shopping and somebody installed a credit card skimmer or something at one of the registers, and now all of a sudden their credit card number is getting stolen as they slide their card. There's a lot of different ways attackers or bad actors will try to get information and exploit shoppers during the holiday seasons. And we're going to talk about some of those examples, some ways we can spot them, some ways we can protect against them, and ultimately what we can do about it. So Josh, anything else you want to weigh in on here before we jump into the agenda?
Yeah, and I like how you're drawing that connection between business and personal life. When we really drive home like basic cyber hygiene stuff on the business side a lot of times, and really those fundamentals really carry over really well into our personal lives. And we'll hit into some of those things, like what happens when we actually do fall for some of this stuff, and really being educated on what threats are out there, and hey, what can we do on the front side? What can we do on the proactive side to be prepared for it? From a technology or from an education standpoint. So looking forward to the slides that we have coming up here.
So quick high level of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk a little bit about social media and safety when you're on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, or whatever social media you might use. LinkedIn counts as that as well. Safe shopping practices, specifically when you're shopping online. Again, with Cyber Monday deals and everything else, a lot of holiday shopping has shifted to online stores. And then we're going to end with just our general phishing and account security. So regardless of the scam type, most of them end up falling back to, are you taking care of your account that you have with Amazon or Twitter or whatever else? How are you protecting that account? And so we're going to close out the conversation on that. So as promised, social media. Starting out, first and foremost, I guess kind of want to take this one back to the basics. social media, obviously, when it first became a thing, people were really focused on, hey, only connect with people you know. You don't know who's sitting behind the keyboard. If you connect on LinkedIn with somebody or on Facebook, you actually want to know who you're connecting with. We've kind of lost that in the past couple of years, right? As social media presences have become bigger, now have people like influencers, celebrities, whoever else creating these social media accounts. People, and especially children, tend to befriend whoever they want, right? They see somebody they think they know or somebody who's an influencer, and they want to connect to that person. And that's okay in some cases, but in general, let's be skeptical of those connections, right? If you don't know somebody and they're connecting with you, and they're the ones initiating the request, make sure you actually validate who that person is. Do you actually know them? Obviously, Facebook is a perfect example of what can people see on your Facebook profile when they're just a general public person viewing it versus they're actually connected with you, they've befriended you, and now they have access to a lot more of your information. So adding somebody as a friend or connecting with them on platforms like LinkedIn exposes a lot more of your personal details to that connection. So now they might be able to see who else you're connected to. Maybe they can see where you live or your birthday or where you work. All of this information is now being exposed. And in some cases, that's okay. And you want that to be shared, but we want to make sure we're sharing it with the right people, right? So connect with people you know. In the same vein, make sure you're reviewing the privacy settings on your account. This one is huge. In general, go through your Facebook and LinkedIn and all your other social media accounts at least once a year, right? Cybersecurity Month was back in October. Take that time to go through your social media accounts and look through the privacy settings. Technologies change over time, privacy defaults change over time. Take a look what's out there and make sure you're adjusting it appropriately, right? When you post on LinkedIn, when you post on Facebook, who can see those posts by default? Can your employer see them? Do you want your employer to see them? Maybe, maybe not. So those are all things that can be seen and set and reviewed within your privacy settings. So take a look at those on a regular basis and adjust them as necessary. So Josh, I'm going to pause there before I hit the last two points, or maybe you can take those if you want, but anything else to weigh in on?
Yeah, I think the connection with only people sometimes we're on social media because we want to increase our brand or really reach out to people and increase our presence, right? So we have different purposes for different accounts a lot of times, and it's just knowing what your privacy settings are on the specific accounts for that purpose, right? So maybe you do want to try to get to know people and meet people online in some accounts, and just knowing what you're giving out to that type of audience. So kind of know your audience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and again, that kind of leads into the be careful what you share. Um, who can see what you share online? And I'm going to jump ahead a slide, and I'll come back here. But a lot of times, people think, hey, I don't share anything sensitive, right? I don't really. I'm careful about what I post. I leave a comment here or there, but I'm not sharing anything that anybody cares about. Well, included two real screenshots from one from Facebook, one from Twitter, where people are probably sharing a little more than they realize because they're responding to somebody else's post, or they want to kind of show their friends what they're doing. So the first one on the left, these are pretty common. Specifically on Facebook, we see them a lot. It says, "What's your elf name?" Or maybe it takes you to a quiz and it asks you questions that the questions themselves seem pretty innocent, but take a look at it from a bad actor's perspective, right? Somebody who's trying to learn information about you and maybe use it to get into one of your accounts or impersonate you or something like that. What are they getting out of this? Well, if you respond to the "What's your elf name?" and you say, "Hey, my name's Sparkle Sugar Plum," all of a sudden you told this bad actor, you just told everybody on Facebook that your birthday's in February, right? Now, that's one piece of information by itself. It's not the end of the world necessarily, but how many of these types of quizzes are you responding to, right? What other information are you getting out of this? From another one, did they maybe get your birth day, right? The actual day you were born. Did they get your full last name or anything like that? What other information are you actually exposing when you respond to these things that look fun, right? They appear fun, harmless, and innocent, and that's really the intention, right? That's exactly what the bad actor wants you to do, is not think, and so you give up this information.
Yeah, I think the
The other
important part
one,
there
oh,
too,
good.
oh, sorry, John, but a lot of these quizzes, if you think about those password reset questions, a lot of times that you're answering for like my banking account and things like that, it's sensitive information. You can kind of draw a parallel on the type of quizzes that are out there and then the questions that are there for password reset stuff. So maybe in your password reset stuff for your critical accounts, maybe you're making up some fun stuff there that's not actually real information, right? You can put whatever you want in there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josh. Very good point. Think of some of those common password reset questions or those account security questions. What town did you grow up in? Where did you go to high school? What was your mother's maiden name? Things like that. Um, a lot of that's available on social media anymore, right? I grew up in a very, very small town. If somebody knows I grew up in that town and my security question is, where did you go to high school? There's really only one answer to that question, right? So as this information gets out there, first of all, you can't take it back, right? And so that goes to maybe we go and choose more difficult security questions, right? Things that aren't going to be public knowledge, or make up answers is a common trend as well. Give an answer that you know you'll remember, but isn't actually true to what the question is.
You know, this
And
these
then,
sorry, this slide kind of reminds
go
me
ahead.
of I don't know, John, Home Alone. Are you a big fan of that movie?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be watching that here in the next couple of months for sure. But I think of that scene like it's the night before they're leaving, right? And it's like total chaos in their house, and there's a pizza guy there trying to get paid for a pizza delivery. And then you see Harry come in, right? He's the thief. He's dressed as a police officer. He's trying to get information to know when he can come back and steal some stuff, right? That's what he's all about. Like, man, if Harry had social media, back then, right, it'd be a lot easier with a lot of these quizzes, huh?
oh yeah. Yeah, so social media has made this a lot easier, and Home Alone's a perfect example as it feeds into the other example on this screen right now. Um, be careful of where you're sharing pictures of where you're at or where you're telling people where you're at as well. We do see an increase of physical, like burglaries or physical attacks during the holidays as well, because people are traveling. They may be advertising that. This screenshot is showing that hey, somebody's at Epcot. They shared that on Twitter. And they're still there because they said a few minutes ago this happened. It's not like they got home and now they're sharing the story. So if you know this person, or maybe did some additional digging and found their Facebook, or maybe you know them in real life, their house is probably sitting empty, right? And so we do see an increase of burglary attacks and some of those physical security attacks around the holidays as well. So keep that in mind when you're sharing information online. Many police departments, I guess I won't say most, but many police departments or news agencies do share articles like this around the holidays as well, because they do see that spike of those types of crimes being committed. So going back to a do's and don'ts list with social media, I think we pretty much hit all of these now. Be careful what you share. Think before you click. We're going to circle back to this one, but what I really want to drive home here is we all think of phishing as somebody trying to get you to click a link in an email, right? They send you something, you aren't thinking, you click the link and you give up your credentials, or something else bad happens. That happens on social media too. And that's something for everybody on the call to be aware of. If you have kids or family, make sure you're sharing that with your family. These types of messages come through text messages, they come through social media, they come through pretty much any digital format you can imagine. These messages are coming in. So make sure you're sharing that message with your circle of family and friends, right? Again, we're all on this call because we're probably technology minded. So make sure we're sharing that. Um, it's nobody wants to find out that, hey, their bank account got emptied out because they accidentally gave up credentials because they thought they were responding to a message from their bank when really it was a phishing attack. And then finally, we'll end this one on be careful trusting any offers that are too good to be true. This is going to kind of be a lead into our online shopping message next. But obviously, if you see a deal online that, hey, somebody is selling whatever, right? Some people say they're selling a car or a motorcycle. It could be a small object that they're trying to sell on Facebook's shopping platform. If it's too good to be true, it probably is, right? Approach those things with a high degree of skepticism. Make sure you're vetting out what they're actually offering, what the deal is, and you do your homework as well. Again, just like leaving an empty house, there are some physical security concerns around that as well. Meet in a safe place if you're actually swapping items with somebody. Again, a lot of police departments do have places they recommend you meeting in the event you're meeting up with somebody to trade something that you bought online. So keep that in mind as well as you're navigating social media.
Yeah, I think this is going to get a little bit harder here and during the holidays, right? We got Black Friday coming up. We're going to be getting hit up by a lot of deals. So I think there's some other things that you can look at too, besides just, hey, it's a really good deal. Let's look a little bit more in depth in some of the other things that we're going to talk about here in the next section.
And just a couple screenshots, I suppose, to accompany the stories or the comments about, hey, these attacks can come from anywhere. These phishing attempts can come from anywhere. One of these is a tweet, right? If you click that link via a tweet, it actually takes you to a malicious site. The screenshot on the right shows a few examples of things that came through text messages. We see this all the time, again, especially around the holidays. How many of us are waiting on packages from FedEx or UPS or USPS, and we get a text and we're like, hey, my package is here, or something went wrong maybe, and I need to go release it or whatever, and it's actually a malicious link. So be careful. Again, be skeptical of messages like that. Kind of think with, hey, did I actually give my phone number to USPS? How are they even texting me in the first place? Sometimes, some people do have actual live updates going to their phone, but in those cases, let's make sure we're hovering over those links, or again, we're treating those with a high degree of skepticism. And Josh, I think you've got a story here that you can share about just the timing of some of these alerts as they come in.
Yeah, the shopping or the package one on the right, that text message coming in. So yeah, family member, this happened to a couple of weeks ago, right? And we actually did have a package that was missing, and we were trying to track that down. And gets a text message, and clicked on the link and immediately got worried. All right, they brought the phone to me to check and see, what do you do after you do click a link and you have that moment of panic of, oh shoot, like this is not what I should have done. And there's some proactive stuff you can do on the front end that we'll talk through, but it's really in this instance, when they clicked the link, it brought up a browser, and the browser popped up a page that caught it. All right, so thankfully, that sent off a really big red flag. If the text message wasn't a big enough red flag with a link in it, that, the browser says, hey, this doesn't look safe. Hey, go back to where you were at, and closed it out. And she was good. But yeah, it's happening. It's happening more and more. And just a comment on the left one there too, right? The too good to be true thing, 15% off. It's not really raising a red flag, but reading that link, right? Likely not going to get any good deals from Kohl's Coupons 2016.com, right?
Yeah. So to close out the social media one, and we're bleeding a little bit into our safe shopping section here, but timing has a lot more impact than people realize, and that's why the holidays are such an important time to make sure we share this message. Again, I can't drive that home enough to share this message, because more and more people are waiting on packages because we're all buying Christmas gifts and whatever else. So making sure that you know what your family's doing and ordering, and that we're looking at these links closely before we just blindly click on them. Moving into safe shopping. Again, we touched on a fair amount of this already, but a few things to keep in mind as you're doing any online shopping. First and foremost, use trusted sites. To Josh's point about the Kohl's Coupons 2016.com, well, that's not a trusted site, right? That looks pretty suspicious. The Amazons of the world, you can generally trust those. Make sure you're on Amazon, right? You're Amazon.com. You're not on a site that's impersonating them. I've been in the situation where I've been trying to find a really, really hard to find item or something, and you find it listed on a site somewhere. I tend to not buy those items though, right? Because I can't trust the site. I can't trust that they're actually going to provide the item, that they're going to keep my credit card information safe, that they're going to keep any of the information I give them safe. So find those trusted sites, eBay's, Amazon. Your stores are generally okay. Target.com, Walmart.com, like any of your big box stores are okay as well. But make sure you're buying from a trusted source.
And some of those
Anything
trusted
else to add to
sources
that?
too. Yeah, so they may not be malicious themselves. It could be someone legitimately trying to sell real stuff, but they don't have the infrastructure to ensure that their site is kept up to date. So styling on their site is a good one to look out for too. If it looks like a super old style of a site, they may be running some old code with some vulnerabilities in there. That they're actually the victim, and then in turn you're the victim for clicking and entering in some information into that site with vulnerabilities.
Yep, absolutely. You gotta unintentional security flaws exist as well, right? And in general, everybody's subject to them, but typically the Amazons of the world, and sorry to keep bringing them up, but they are the number one online shopping store. So it's easy to throw them out. In general, right? They've got pretty good practices in place to keep your information safe because they obviously make their business off of it. But events do happen. We all know that. There's been breaches and incidents in the past, and ultimately we can do what we need to do to stay safe, but we are ultimately putting some of our trust in these stores as we do any online shopping.
If you find yourself,
up.
Sorry, if you find yourself trying to swim through ads too, when you're trying to get to the actual content, you're like constantly searching for that little X all over the place just because your page is just bombarded with ads. Likely that's an untrusted site too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. Not many sites are like that. It's definitely a lot better than the early days of the internet, right? Where no sites had any sort of protection against those intrusive ads. A lot of the trusted or more reliable sites limit or block that type of stuff altogether anymore. So yes, if you come across a site where you're just bombarded with ads, probably best to close the browser and start again, right? Go back to Amazon.com or wherever you were trying to get to and just start over. So, keeping technology up to date is important. Josh kind of mentioned this already. Making sure our computers have the latest patches, our phones are running the latest software, we're using an up-to-date and a modern browser. All very important. They all play a different part in protecting us from some of these malicious sites if we come across them. So as technology improves over time, so do the security measures that are put in place. We want to make sure we're using the latest encryption protocols and all these other features that browsers and phones and everything, all these vendors have made available to us. We want to make sure we're using them, and we do that by making sure the devices are up to date. Josh's example earlier, where one of his family members clicked a link, the browser was smart enough to actually detect that was a malicious site and stopped it, right? That's the benefit of having some of the software up to date as we do online shopping. And in a similar vein, make sure we're browsing via trusted networks as well. So in general, I discourage going and connecting to Starbucks Wi-Fi or public space wireless and start doing credit card transactions over the wireless. There are safety protocols and mechanisms that can be put in place on wireless networks like that, but there's no way to validate or to confirm that they are in fact in place. So if you do online shopping, or specifically any place where you're going to be entering a credit card information, logging into online banking, things like that, I highly recommend either doing it from home where you have your own wireless, or doing it over your cell network too. If you have an unlimited data plan, not everybody does. If you're not watching your data, going over your cell network is pretty secure as well. Some do nots when it comes to online shopping. If you receive a security warning, and there are attacks that mimic security warnings, so you got to watch for those too. But if you receive a security warning saying, hey, it's unsafe to proceed, take heed of that, right? Don't just click through it with, no, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to continue anyway. If your browser or your computer or something is telling you not to proceed, there's probably a reason, right? It probably means it's actually insecure. And here's a screenshot or a couple screenshots of what that looks like. If you get a browser message that says your connection is not private, it means what it says, right? Your connection's not private. Anything you send to that website could be picked up or intercepted by a bad actor. So that's especially important. If you browse to Amazon.com or anywhere you might be entering credit card information or personal information, and you get a message like that, you probably want to actually, again, back out of that. You can contact the vendor if you think you're receiving that message in error, but we want to actually take heed of those messages. Something else to look for, as highlighted by that green and red box in the lower right, is making sure we're using HTTPS versus HTTP. The S stands for secure, or that's at least how you can think of it in your mind. So we want HTTPS, that means it's encrypted. So back in the early days of the internet, most everything was HTTP. Again, as we started doing more financial transactions and handling more sensitive information over the internet, we realized we needed to actually encrypt that information, and we moved to HTTPS. So most reputable sites, like Amazon, Target, Walmart, whatever else, don't redirect you to HTTPS anymore. And again, that's probably a good indicator that you're not actually on a reputable site if they're using HTTP and asking for sensitive information. And then just jumping back to this slide, I've got to throw in a plug for that last bullet point in the do not column. Don't believe any account transfer requests or gift card purchases. This is a very good message to share, especially with older generations. Don't want anybody on the call to take offense to that necessarily, but the USPS actually reports that there's a lot of elder fraud that goes through the mail. Banks report this as well. In general, that's a generation that doesn't necessarily have the best grasp on how some of these technical or electronic funds get transferred and everything. So in general, the best message to share with family and especially that older generation is if you are getting a request to buy gift cards, to transfer money, to cash a check and then transfer money, anything like that, frankly, don't believe it unless you initiated it, right? Unless it's somebody asking for the money because you actually bought something from Amazon, we shouldn't be going and buying a lot of gift cards or, again, cashing a check for $9,000. That's an instant red flag that that's a scam. Banks are picking up on this more and more. They're not perfect, but if they see somebody trying to cash a check and they're able to gain a little bit of information as to why or where it came from, they may actually advise you too that, hey, this is a scam. Don't do this. At the very least, banks are your bank is a good place to call for more information, right? If something just doesn't feel quite right, get a second opinion. Call up your bank and say, hey, I got this. It doesn't feel right. Are you able to confirm, or what do you advise? Most banks are obviously going to prefer you do that versus you cash a check, transfer the money, and now they've got to go through the process of seeing if they can't pull that money back. So anything like that, requests for credit cards, gift cards, transferring money, any requests like that are indicators of scams and should just not be done.
A lot of times these threat actors are really good at building trust on the front end. This happened again to a family member of mine, and like there was a 2 to 3 day thing on the front end of just building trust. So they are really good at crafting their exploit right before they get to the point to where they're asking for a gift card, and the red flag does go off, and it was like, hey, is this for real? But they've already built the trust. So thankfully in this situation, it was at Target, and the person checking out my family member, right, started asking questions, was like, no, I'm not going to sell you this gift card because you need to go talk to your family, right, about this. So just because you got like it's nothing to be ashamed of too, right? Because they're super good at what they do.
Yeah, they absolutely are, and that's what makes some of those situations heartbreaking, if that's the right word. Is you see how the trust was gained over time, and kind of the steps that were taken to gain this person's trust until they actually acted upon it. So never fun to see, but thankfully, again, there is more awareness being raised, and again, driving it home. Let's make sure we're sharing this this message with friends and family. So moving on to the phishing and account security section of this. This is the section we'll close out on, and it's really going to be a culmination of a lot of what we just talked about. This out of all this section, this is going to be most applicable again to business and personal life. What can we actually do about protecting our accounts, right? Mistakes do happen. We do click on phishing links every once in a while. We do accidentally give up creds. We expose information via social media. What can we do to make sure we're protecting our accounts in the best way possible? So first of all, going along the lines of phishing is think before you act for all digital messages. We already hit on this, but phishing doesn't just come through email. It comes through those text messages. It comes through social media. It can come over the phone, right? How many spam calls do we all get anymore with, hey, your I don't know, your warranty's up, whatever else. If you actually follow through with those, it's a scam at the end of it, right? For most of them, they're trying to get something out of you, information, money, whatever else. So make sure you're thinking before you act. Again, these attackers, these bad actors are really good at gaining trust. They use a sense of urgency to get you to act, right? They make it sound like the world's ending. You need to act now, otherwise we're going to disable your account. We're going to bill you. We're going to do whatever. There's consequences if you don't act quickly. Well, any sense of urgency like that is a red flag probably that you should be thinking, yeah, is this actually urgent, or are they actually just trying to get me to act before I have time to process all of this? When in doubt, contact the sender, right? If you get an email from your bank or a text message from your bank and it tells you, hey, we detected fraud on your account, don't hesitate to call your bank through a trusted number, a number that you actually know or is published on their website. Call them and verify, hey, I just got this message. Is this real or not? That is one of the most fail-proof ways we can actually prevent phishing and prevent some of these scams is by verifying the legitimacy of that message. So do that when in doubt. Wire fraud, it protects against things like wire fraud. It protects against phishing. It really is I'm not going to call it quite fail-safe because there's gaps in every solution, but it is one of the best ways to protect yourself against those types of attacks. Anything to add on that, Josh?
I think that's really good. Really important to use those pre-established contact methods to things that you know that you already have contact saved in your phone, or you actually end the current session with whoever you're talking to, thinking and then go into the website. And it's absolutely important to make sure you're not starting the communication again with the threat actor, right? And thinking from the beginning, like, how did all this start? Like, was I contacted to begin with, or did I initiate the contact? If someone else initiated the contact inbound to me, then, huge red flag there. Go ahead, end it, stop it, take a second to think, and then go to your pre-established contact methods.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump ahead and I'll circle back, but one of the things a lot of online resources, whether it's banking or shopping or anything else, have started to do are keep tracks of messages they send you, right? So when in doubt, you can actually log into Amazon and look at message history, right? Hey, did they actually send me a message, and what was the content of that message? So when you get an email from somebody claiming to be Amazon, you're able to actually go log into your account and validate that they were the ones who sent that. So that is a way you can actually verify as well without necessarily having to pick up the phone and call. But in general, a good rule of thumb as well is, hey, if my bank is emailing me or Amazon's emailing me, I'm just going to go log in, right? I'm not going to click on links in the email. I know my bank's website. I'm going to navigate to that and log in. I'm not going to try to just follow that link in the email. So that is another good method too, to just limit the amount of exposure you have, or the ability of something to go wrong, right? Just start not trusting pretty much any links in emails. Obviously, MFA is good as well. This message gets shared a lot. It is really crucial. So we all should have, and if you don't, let's talk, but we all should have MFA on our corporate accounts, right? When you log into email or you log in remotely into your corporate environment, you have to enter your username and password, and then you probably get a prompt for a code from your phone or maybe a little device, or there's another stage of authentication before you're allowed into that network. Make sure we're using MFA on personal accounts too, right? Banking information, how many people have online banking? Amazon, again, those shopping sites, make sure we have MFA on those, because if or when you do get phished or your credentials get leaked somewhere, MFA is going to protect your account, right? If a bad actor gets a hold of your password and they go and try to log into your bank account, not only can they not get in because they don't have your MFA code, you also get notified that somebody's trying to log into your account, right? So now you can say, hey, that wasn't me trying to log in. I've got to go change my password. So it's really twofold. It prevents people from logging in, and it notifies you so you can go do something about it. MFA is critical. It is one of the most effective things we can do against account compromises, and it's overlooked quite often. So it's often seen as a roadblock. That's obviously intentional, right? Because we want to slow down those bad actors. But I would much rather have my bank information safe and take 30 seconds longer to log into my bank account than have somebody else get access to it. And obviously, if your password is leaked or exposed, make sure you change it immediately, right? So if you do get that MFA prompt you didn't initiate, or you accidentally did click on a phishing link and realize, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. I realized now it was phishing. Go change your password as soon as possible. A couple do nots. Don't reuse passwords between accounts. So I do have a story I'm going to share for this one. A lot of people read this and they're like, yeah, it's not the end of the world, right? They're all accounts I trust, whatever else. Don't use the same password that you use for Netflix, that you use for Amazon, that you use for your bank or any other account. Don't use the same password, because the fact of the matter is sometimes a password gets leaked, right? Whether it's you accidentally getting phished, maybe it's a big corporation that gets hacked and has an incident, and now that password is out there, right? A bad actor has it. And sometimes it's through no fault of your own, right? Sometimes these passwords do get leaked. We want to make sure that if a password gets leaked, it's not now a master key that gets into all of your accounts. I unfortunately did have to work an incident maybe a month ago now, where a password reuse was, a password was being reused, right? So a password was used for like Target and Walmart and a couple other sites, and one of them got leaked. They were able to get in to all these various shopping sites and actually start buying stuff. So the user picked up on it fairly quickly. I believe they worked with their bank to make sure there was nothing going on the banking side of things. And then they went obviously and changed their passwords on all of these shopping sites as well, these online sites. So password reuse can have some pretty devastating consequences through no fault of your own at the end of the day, because your password can get leaked elsewhere. And then,
Yeah, I think
Josh,
security.
if you want to talk a little, perfect.
Yeah, security is always a balance between ease of use and being secure, right? And I think it's very much worth it in the MFA world, and not clicking links and having to launch browsers to go to a known good site versus following links. Those little conveniences it's worth the sacrifice in order to avoid some of these things. Because when the pain hits, like I'd rather be taking 2 seconds longer on each login in order than to combat the pain on the back end of things getting compromised. Question for you, John, on MFA. Like, are all MFA forms created equal? Like, if I got an option to get a text message or a code sent to my email, or I got Microsoft Authenticator app or the Semantic app, if I got options, what should I choose?
Yeah, in general, we prefer apps over texting or email MFA codes. Ultimately, something is better than nothing, but email authentication and texting authentication, there are ways around that for bad actors. So they are able to impersonate a phone number and maybe get that code sent to you, or sent to the bad actor instead of you. Emails, obviously, if your email account is the account that got compromised, they're able to get those those codes that get sent to the email address. So in general, we want to try to use the Authenticator app, whether that's Google Authenticator, Microsoft, Duo. There's a lot out there. We want to use those apps that actually generate a code or send you a prompt that says, hey, are you actually logging in? And then you can hit yes or no. So those are the preferred methods. But again, some sites only support texting or something like that. That is definitely better than nothing. It makes it that much harder for an attacker to get in. All right. And then a couple other just general best practices or cyber hygiene or security hygiene items, if you will. Don't use simple or default credentials. Should be pretty obvious one, but in addition to reusing passwords, your password shouldn't be password, right? It shouldn't be 1 2 3 4 5 6. Make sure it's complex. Make sure it's random and unique to that account. And then don't be accessing information from public computers. So any shared computers, careful what you're doing on those in general. If you have a phone or a personal laptop or desktop, use that for any of your personal information. If you must use a shared computer somewhere at a lobby of a hotel or whatever, generally I recommend private browsers and making sure you actually log out at the end of it. So with that, kind of want to end on, and we do have a couple questions that have rolled in, but before we get to those, I want to end on just a phishing example and some of the things to look for. So every email, every text message, every message that hits you, you should do a quick analysis of, hey, is this legitimate or not? And as you do that, you should be going through and counting red flags is what I like to call them. So go through the message and pick out all the things that don't seem quite right. Look at the sender address. Look at how the greeting is written. Hover over those hyperlinks. Are there any misspelt items, or does it just look a little odd? Every time you come across one of those things, that should be a red flag, right? And if any one message has 2 or 3 red flags, it should probably be a pretty good clue in your mind that, hey, this isn't legitimate, or at the very least, I need to go validate it further, right? I need to actually contact the source to figure out if it was legitimate or not. So it's pretty obvious. So any security awareness training is always going to hit on hovering over links, looking at who it's from, who it went to. Look at a few other things though. Grammar in these types of messages always seems to be a little odd. Requiring to open investigation is underlined in this screenshot here. That's worded really weirdly, right? You wouldn't think Amazon, a huge company, would be sending out messages with poor grammar like that. You can see the sense of urgency, right? What happens if you don't respond? They're going to terminate the account. Well, we definitely don't want that, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and click the link. They're using that false sense of urgency, right? They're creating haste. They want you to click without thinking. Hovering over the link, this is a good example where it looks like you're going to Amazon.com, but the moment you hover over it, it's actually taking you to an obscured site that you don't actually know where it's going to take you. And ultimately, I'll end this with unexpected messages. If you're getting a message of somebody requesting you to do something that you weren't expecting or you didn't plan for, also probably a good sign that it's not legitimate, right? Obviously, that's a little different in the work world where you may have somebody from a team reaching out to enlist your help for something. But if you get a message from your CEO, this is actually a pretty common attack. You get a message from your CEO and he says, hey, I need you to buy these gift cards. Can't talk right now. I'm in a really important client meeting. We get messages, or we hear about messages like that all the time. And unfortunately, users get that and they're like, oh, wow, this is urgent. It's from the CEO. He's trusting me to do it. I'm going to get this done, right? They think they're doing a good thing, but the attacker, the bad actor, is using that position of power, the sense of urgency, and they're trying to get this user to actually act. Now, most people in organizations probably aren't being communicated to by the CEO on a daily basis, right? So most of those messages are unexpected, right? If users would pause for a second and think, why is he asking me to do this, right? That can be a pretty useful tool to just take that second and pause and think, yeah, this isn't actually expected. Why is it coming to me? Why isn't it going to our finance department or the assistant or whoever else that would normally get these types of requests? So in general, count the red flags in messages like this. If you have a couple red flags, validate the message yourself if you can by contacting the sender. or report it to your IT, obviously, if it's a business email. And with that, we are coming to an end, so we will address some of the questions here. The first one is, what are your thoughts on services like Apple Pay for online shopping? I've heard not to use debit, but credit cards only. I will say I'm going to preface this one with I'm not in the financial world, so I'm not going to get into the details of debit versus credit. In general, credit cards tend to have more protections against them, or historically have. If somebody gets a hold of your debit card and removes the money from your account, historically there's been little recourse that you could pursue in those events. Credit cards have a few more protections in place. As far as things like Apple Pay, I personally love it. I use it occasionally where it's supported. It's a good way to have another layer of security between the vendor you're doing the transaction with and what your credit card information actually is, right? It obviously puts more trust in people like Apple, or PayPal would be a similar service, because now you're trusting them with your banking information. But now you're not giving your credit card information to all of these different vendors, right? Now, if you use Apple Pay as your primary method of payment, that is the one place you've got to protect, versus now all of these dozen or 24 vendors have your credit card information online. So in general, it's a good service. Apple Pay, PayPal, services like that are good. There's a good idea behind it, but just know that you are putting more trust into those vendors as well. Josh, I don't know if you have anything you want to weigh in on there.
I think that's solid. That's what I use. That's what I do. So I'm following it myself. So I think that's great advice. Kind of moving to the next question. We got one about banks are already requiring two-factor. Would you recommend that this is applied to your personal accounts other than just banking? I would say anywhere. Well, if we backed up on the business side, right, for two-factor authentications, if we're looking at basic cyber hygiene, what are we recommending, right? We're recommending anything on email. So email account, yeah, do that. Anything externally facing. So I don't know. There's your answer. Yeah, if it's got anything that you care about. So if you've given that company the ability to purchase stuff, if you've got any of your sensitive information in there, so look at your social media accounts, your email accounts, all of these vendors that you do business with, right? I would put it on anything and everything that I could.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Another question that came in was iOS 16. So for Apple iPhones, they have a new lockdown mode that's marketed as being helpful in preventing or securing your phone against certain types of attacks. Are there any downsides? What was the specific question? In general, the lockdown mode, first of all, I'm going to say I have not vetted this fully myself, but Apple really has designed it to be very restrictive. So while it does protect against some of these types of attacks, it's also going to severely impact functionality and usability. So things like attachments are blocked. Certain websites won't be able to be browsed to. So the lockdown mode, I typically will see more used by corporations maybe that have corporate devices. It's not typically going to be a fit for personal devices unless you are super securely minded. It's going to frankly cause more pain than good. Josh mentioned earlier in the call that there's a balance of usability and security. The lockdown mode really takes the security first approach and kind of throws usability out the window. So in short, it's a cool tool, I guess, within Apple's toolbox, but it's not going to be used by the general person. All right. that is what we've got for you today. So I thank you all for joining us for this webinar. Again, it is recorded. We will be sharing that out. And I'm sure we'll be posting it on our social media as well, LinkedIn and wherever else you can find us. So we will share this out. Again, feel free, share it with friends, family, other people you work with. And we'll catch you on the next one. If there's any more questions, feel free to contact us and we'll follow up with you. Thank you.